So here is another pair of tweets on something called culture of nice and related areas. So, 15 years ago there was a phenomenon. Culture of nice. The driving principle being that one should refrain from providing any form of criticism, constructive or otherwise. We've since seen the advent of safe spaces and growing fears of hate speech, which is to say, speech one hates. In modern times, hate speech, as it were, hate speech, check out my video. Hate speech is not a thing, available now on BitChute and YouTube. But in modern times, hate speech is applied to critical speech. The nebulous definition of the term has allowed big tech companies to censor content without transparency. Those that grew up in a culture of nice, now of age, work to provide the insulation they've always known. Okay, so 15 years ago there was a phenomenon called culture of nice. Now I'm sure that this culture of nice is still around, but I really heard it, maybe it hit critical mass about 15 years ago, around 2005, 2003, in which people, you want to be polite. Let's get this out of the way right now. You want to be polite to people. You want to be kind. If somebody asks you to do something and they've asked you in a nice way and they've earned it, or there's whatever reasoning you want to use, you'd want to help them out if you have the time and you care. And of course, if somebody asks you, please use this pronoun, my pronouns, Jeff Tidwell, me, him. You can use those pronouns if you wish. But we have this idea that you want to be nice. People say, well, it's not political correct. It's not just political correctness, Jeff. It's called being fucking polite to use someone's pronouns. And of course, I believe that. It's polite. If someone says, please call me this, use this name for me, this is my name, this is my pronoun, you want to use that. You want to be kind and treat the person the way that they'd like to be treated. And of course, treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. I think a very special man or woman said that one day, but you'll have to leave me a comment below with who said that. Treat your neighbor as you treat thyself. So, culture of nice, we do want to have a culture that isn't inherently malevolent and mean. Of course we do. Not want people running around treating each other like shit. I get it. I understand it. But what was happening with this culture of nice was that the driving principle was that these people should refrain from providing any form of criticism. Any form of criticism, constructive or otherwise. So going back to the first tweet that we discussed today, saying that certain people should be exempt from humor, from jokes, they should be exempt from, being disagreed with. They should be exempt from all this stuff. And I said that was very dehumanizing, debasing, and infantilizing. And it's true, it is. When people you can't even give someone feedback, positive feedback, constructive feedback, maybe negative feedback. Maybe it's just a general neutral-ish observation that they're making. But this idea that, you have to be nice, I got to be careful. And you have to ask the question, why? Why are you being so careful? Why are you being so careful? Is it because you view that person on a lower plane? That maybe you feel like you're punching down if you give them honest, constructive feedback? I don't know. That might be a little unhealthy if true. If true, that's a little unhealthy. because you want to be able to, you want to spare people's feelings, of course. Like if you're looking at somebody and they have maybe they've done some art, maybe they've done something, they've created something, and you're looking at it, you're like, and yeah, this is good. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but yeah, it's great. Hey, it's great. You know, of course you want to be nice to people. You want to treat people kindly, but you also don't want to be lying to people, because what happens when you don't give merit where you believe merit is due, or if you don't give feedback that may be negative, it may be sort of like, well, you need to fix this and this. I say give, of course, accolades before criticisms, talk about the positives, and then cover the negatives afterward. I think that's more productive. But if you're completely shielding people, keeping them in this culture of nice, in which you're not telling them the truth, you're not giving them a chance to improve or succeed, you're just kind of limiting them to the box that you have set out and said, you know, I'm not going to give you the feedback. I'm just going to let you keep on going and keep on making what I see as mistakes, and hey, maybe it'll work out. Hey, again, I'm not judging. You make the choice. We all make the choice. We believe in individual agency on this channel. You could have a plethora of reasons, many of which that may be unbeknownst to me and others, as to why you're operating. Mind reading is impossible, of course, and I can't determine why people do things. And neither can you. But sometimes people do this for one reason or another, and all that happens is the inertia continues. There's no counterforce to stop what's happening, because the culture of nice has erased the meritocracy. It's erased the system in which you tell people when they've done something that might not be so great. I prefer honesty. I get honest feedback all the time. Some of it I take, all of it I know. Some of it I actually use, and some of it I don't. But the reality is that when you don't obey the rules of meritocracy, well, you kind of slip into this thing called a reverse meritocracy, or it's pretty likely that you'll go into what is an idiocracy, in which people just keep doing things without being told that they could probably use a change to be more accessible and to be more to get more attention, to be more entertaining, or to achieve whatever goal they're looking to achieve. If they're trying to achieve a goal, and because you want to be nice, culture of nice, you don't tell them where they can improve, well, don't be surprised if they don't improve. That's the crux of it right there. But there's more. We've since seen, in the past 15 years, especially in the past 5 years, we've seen this advent of safe spaces. I think 2014 was the year in which the world of safe spaces and people that need to be insulated from reality, and the intersectionalism, where people just looked at everybody by their immutable characteristics and put them into groups, and then had fractals of, oh, you happen to be this, this, and this, so you have this many victim points or this many privilege points, whatever it might be. We got into this whole collectivist groupthink, hive mind mindset that I feel like it really hit critical mass in 2014. Of course, if you think it began earlier or later, leave a comment below with your thoughts and observations. But, we had safe spaces, people that are too sensitive for one reason or another to handle unfiltered reality. And they needed quiet places away where they can exist. And of course, if people want to be isolated, I do believe in negative liberty. You should have the right to, your own space, your own. You don't have to interact with other people if you don't want to. But of course, if you're on a college campus, you're trying to expand your world, expand your horizons, become one with the world, become more worldly. You do need to interact with other people. And you need to be open to disagreement, dialogue, right? It doesn't begin and end with, I'm going into this room now, I'm walking away. This is a space where only certain people can go. That's not the way our country works. We're founded on the Constitution. Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. And in public areas, of course, you don't have the ability in the modern public square to have privacy until you go into somebody's, household or their business, where you actually do have a sense of privacy. But that gets off the point that we have seen the advent of safe spaces and the growing fears of hate speech, which is an arbitrary term assigned usually onto things that people, they just don't like. They're offended by it. They find that there's hate in there. And of course, with hate speech, there's a couple of different, angles people take. They say, well, every statement has a balance of hate and love. And this statement has more hate than love in it, so it's hate speech. Here's a dictionary definition of hate speech, and you need to understand that what you said falls under this I've determined that it falls under this definition of hate speech, hateful conduct. And so they go ahead and they remove your voice, or they censor you, they put you in a timeout. They put you in your own safe space, safe from everybody else. And everybody else is safe from you, based on their arbitrary, authoritarian decision. So, of course, when you define hate speech, when you define free speech, you're taking an authoritarian position. I am the authority on what free speech and hate speech and all these other forms of contact and dialogue and speech are. I say don't trust people that do that. Don't trust me. I have my views, I have my opinion, I have my bias, I have my preferences. I don't think that free speech should include libel, slander, doxing. I don't think that you should have unconsented pornography or anything that causes direct harm, fire in a crowded theater. I mean, I have my sort of guidelines for what free speech should be. But generally, I fall on the side of free speech absolutism, and I go ahead and I say, look, we should default to the absolute free speech, but then look at certain cases where you have, incitements of violence, and you say, well, maybe this is more harmful to society than allowing them to speak, because all they're doing is saying, hey, why don't you go out and kill people? Huh? That doesn't fall into the sort of kosher, as it were, free speech that I have come to love. Free speech wins, folks. Of course, if someone says something that is misinformation or disinformation, free speech wins, because you go ahead and you say the truth, or you say something that undermines their argument or gives another side. Somebody else comes in, and soon enough, the good ideas float to the top. They float to the top, and that's my belief. You don't want to remove the voices that are wrong. You want to teach them. You want to talk to them. You want to interact and find out, well, maybe they're not so wrong, they're just misled. Or maybe I'm misled. Maybe I'm the one that's wrong. Maybe I'm listening to them. They're not misled. I'm misled. Happens all the time. And then we do the scientific method. We take both sides. You listen to both sides, or all sides, however many sides there may be. And you come to a higher truth. Using the scientific method, you do A/B tests, and you get there. But we have this fear of hate speech, and that's why Katie Hopkins was censored, deplatformed temporarily from Twitter. And I looked at what she said, and I didn't believe that it was hate speech. But again, it's in the eye of the observer, in the eye of the beholder. It's subjective, and so it's difficult to create a law around something that is highly subjective. So I continue here. In modern times, hate speech is applied to critical speech. So again, people are looking at it, again, they're using the lens of immutable characteristics, of race, of sex, of gender, of sexual orientation, gay, straight, lesbian, LGBTQAI+. They're doing all these different, they're looking at you by your ethnicity and where you're from and all this stuff. And they're saying, well, you're being critical. We're calling it hate speech because the people involved were this race and this race and this race and this gender and this sex. It's hate speech. You're not giving, true empirical veracity rational truth, observable, objective as objective gets, truth, you're doing this based on somebody's body type, or you're doing it based on how they look or who they are. And so we get all these claims of hate speech when somebody's just being simply critical. The nebulous definition of the term has allowed big tech companies to censor content without transparency. So you have a TOS, terms of service, in which you have hateful conduct is outlawed. It's ruled against. You can't do it. And so who makes the decision as to what's hateful? People will report, they'll brigade, they'll team up and do things. Brigading, of course, is people just pigpiling and teaming up on account, mass reporting, pressing that button. Again, not the blue button, but another button that's less savory. And they go ahead, and then the big tech company doesn't have to tell you why. You know, Fred wasn't told why he was deplatformed. You know, Poopy420, my good friend, was not told why. It's always just hateful conduct. Hey, scrub your entire channel, your entire YouTube channel, for all the content that doesn't fit our newly updated TOS. I know you have 325 videos, many of them well over 10 minutes in length, but hey, you got to remove all the content that's no longer allowed under our current TOS. It was okay before. No, we're not going to give you any tools or tell you what's wrong with each video. You got to do it yourself. You got to spend the time and attention to do all this. And frankly, a lot of people are just giving up. A lot of people are quitting content creation over this. They're quitting Twitter. They're quitting YouTube. They're quitting everything because this is what they want. I don't mean to ascribe motive, but I think this is what Google wants. Yeah. Because if you're constantly prioritizing these premium, moneyed creators, these corporate creators, verified, you know, the ones that have blue checks and that they're the truth tellers, they're the fact checkers. They are verified prophets of the modern religion of institutions, state, media, academia, academic elites deciding what is right and what is wrong, and then laws, rules, terms of service being crafted to match the dogmatic rhetoric of academics and the intelligentsia. That's what's happening, folks. You're seeing it every day. I put up a video about the modern religion that is known as global warming. You get a Wikipedia article right below it talking about, well, climate change, the modern religion, that is global warming. Of course, I do have a video out. Global warming is a modern religion, featuring Bernie Sanders. Check that out on my channel for my further thoughts on climate change and how we can solve it. I am agnostic on the modern religion of global warming, but we do have some concerns, and we do desire a less polluted world with clean air, clean water, and cleaner energy that is more sustainable. So certainly check that out. Spoiler alert, Mark Schneider will know. Hey Mark, if you're watching, how's it going? Sub Schneider on Twitter. Check him out. Mark is an expert and an advocate for Generation 3 and Generation 4 nuclear power, which is the best way of defeating climate change. So definitely check him out. He does Periscope sometimes. And you can actually ask him questions about the process. I have personally learned a lot, and I have much more to learn. So thank you, Mark. But certainly, you have people that they want Wikipedia articles, authoritative sources. They want to determine, Google News wants to determine who is and isn't credible based on, well, you start to see the seams that a lot of it's political over time. But, search it for yourself. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to say that my view is the view. I like to see as many sides as possible. You'll have to observe it for yourself, gather that empirical evidence, and go forth from there. But, Wikipedia, for example, you have literal people re-editing articles again and again to match the narrative that they would like people to believe. The verified, the true narrative. Of course, they're rewriting history. They're rewriting the past. You have people that reframe the past. For example, the 1619 Project from the New York Times. God bless African Americans, those that that have family that were slaves back in the day. I do want history to be told, but of course, again, reframing everything through this race filter as we're trying to move away from racism. We're trying to move away from a racial society where everything is determined by, people were only segregated 60 or 70 years ago, if not 50. The civil rights era was only 50 years ago, and many things weren't even solved by that. In fact, some things were made even worse. But the fact is that they do want to reframe and rewrite history and make it match the institutional racism, systemic racism narrative that, of course, underlines the modern religion of social justice. Without these narratives in place that hold people down, that make them into victims, and they were victims, there are victims, but I'm saying that victim mentality holds people in that status and holds people in that state. And I want to lift them up. I want to lift people up. If you don't have much money, if you're not very privileged, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what race, color, creed, gender, sex, occupation, whatever it might be. I think we should have uplifting, optimistic content out there. Not just constantly say, well, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, your Irish ancestors were indentured servants. I don't need to hear that every day. I'm looking out the window. I don't see any indentured servants. It's because I don't live in Africa. But again, onward and upward with the rest of this content. I'm not being very nice, you might have noticed, as we discussed the culture of nice. But I'm being true, and I think it's better to tell hard truths and give tough love than to keep people in the dark. Those that grew up in a culture of nice work for these companies. They now are of age, and they are determining how our culture is culturally engineered. Google is doing it with their searches. Twitter is doing it with their algorithm. All these companies have algorithms, and they always say, well, it's not the algorithm that's changing things. It's the advertisers. They don't want the advertisers don't want to be seen on your video, and yet they're seen anyway. So there's no way, without transparency, you have to guess, was it a computer or was it a person? And if it was a person, it's somebody that probably spent a little bit too much time in a safe space. And were told too many times that they were funny and that they were, well, good at what they do, when they really could have used some constructive feedback to really push them forward and get them across the finish line. Because of the culture of nice, they were not told. People were just trying to be nice. We're being nice. They were told that you're doing the right thing. Keep going. And that was a great disservice, very disrespectful to them. But they're now of age, and now they're making those decisions. They're the ones that go, yeah, let's go ahead and ban Alex Jones off of everything at once, all the platforms at once, all the streaming services all at once. It's totally not planned. Oh, it's not planned. No. We didn't plan this out. It just happened organically. We just went ahead and said, every single service on the internet, except for Infowars.com. And I don't really watch Infowars, by the way, but this is a great example. They go ahead and they say, well, we don't like him. It's misinformation. It's disinformation. It's not very nice. I don't like to hear it. I don't want to hear this anymore. Nobody wants to hear this anymore. I mean, half the people do, but nobody wants to. And therefore, I have the power. I have the authority. And I'm going to go ahead and press this button here and erase them, deplatform, demonetize, deperson, everything I need to do to create that safe space once again, the one that I've gotten used to, the one that I've grown up in. That's what happens. You get used to an environment, and then we wish as human beings to replicate that environment. How many times have you gone to a hotel, you're on a trip, and then you say, it just doesn't feel like home, I'm homesick. How to cure homesickness when you've been living in too many safe spaces is to turn the whole world into a safe space. And that way, well, you won't be offended again. Everybody will be happier according to you. And you won't have to deal with cognitive dissonance. Your confirmation bias can just take over. You don't have to have any discomfort at ideas you don't like. Because, let's face it, their wrong think. You want to be in the right think echo chamber, not the wrong think one. That's the other team. That's the other people. You don't want to be there. You want to be here. In the right think world. So culture of nice has been a thorn in my side for 15 years. I hadn't heard the term in a while, so I brought this up back in June of 2019. Because I was seeing that, hate speech and safe spaces are just the next, extrapolation, the next evolution in culture of nice. Be nice to people. If they ask you to call them a certain name or a certain pronoun, use it. But let's not try to flip over meritocracy and not give credit where it's due. I actually was listening to, I saw a tweet from Hassan Piker of the Young Turks, and he said, meritocracy is a lie. Meritocracy is a lie. And so I didn't give him any kudos. Meritocracy is a lie. Why would I give anybody any kudos? That would be lying. So, of course, if you enjoy this content, please do like and subscribe, and leave me a comment below with your thoughts and observations.